So Andrew and I were out and about for my birthday last week, and we rode up to Asheville to run an errand, and then we were just kind of around town for a little while before coming back into Spartanburg. And while we were in Biltmore Village, we we parked our car and we were walking around just scoping out the area, seeing if we found a restaurant we wanted to eat at for dinner. And when we get back in the car, we decide we're going to move on, probably go back to Spartanburg to eat. And Andrew tries 3 or 4 times to crank my car, and it's not starting. So we're like, okay, let's give it a few minutes, and then we'll try again. And so while we're waiting a few minutes, I happen to glance to my right, and I see that not even 15 feet from us, this woman is standing. There's a lot of really pretty cobblestone walkways in Biltmore Village. And so she's standing on one of those pretty walkways, and she's kind of gazing in the other direction, just standing there. And she just caught my eye. And I noticed that she seemed sort of like a tomboy, and I didn't really know what she was doing standing there. She caught my eye. So then it's been 2 or 3 minutes, and Andrew tries to crank my car again. So we try 3 or 4 times to no avail. It's not cranking. And so we're like, well, we're just hoping against hope we're going to get this car to start. So we're like, well, let's wait a few more minutes and then we'll try again. We'll try again. I don't know what this method is we were trying out, but we were like, we're going to wait another few minutes and then we'll try again. And so this time I'm like, I get Andrew's attention. I'm like, look at that woman over there. She's still standing there. She's still standing, kind of looking in the other direction. I'm like, she's peculiar, isn't she? And just felt the need to comment on me thinking that she was peculiar. And I can't remember exactly what Andrew said, but he agreed. I'm like, yeah, she's kind of different looking. So then we try to crank my car again, and it's not starting. And so we've come to the conclusion, okay, I think we're going to have to get jumped off to get the car started. Okay, so where do we start? We're in a strange town. We are around a few restaurants, so I'm like, well, should we just go find a restaurant employee and see if they happen to have jumper cables? What do you think? Where do we start? And just as we're starting this conversation, that woman that I had just commented on, she starts walking in our direction. And we had started getting out of the car at this point to kind of figure out a game plan, what we're going to do. And so she starts making her way over to us. And I'm like, okay, so what's going on here? And so she, in just a few seconds was over to us, and she was like, hey, I heard that you're kind of having some car trouble. And I thought maybe I could help you. I used to be a mechanic for 20 years. And so immediately I just feel humbled. Like, wow. I was just noticing her and had to comment on me thinking that she's peculiar. And then she immediately has stepped in to come to our aid. And so we explained to her, well, as you've heard about 15 times now, we've tried to crank this car, and it's just not starting. So we lift up the hood, and she decides she's going to take a look while we try to crank it again. And so she immediately sees, okay, it's the battery. And obviously I don't know much about cars. She said something about it's not holding a lot of voltage right now, or something along those lines. And then she was like, this can happen if, she figured out we weren't from around Asheville. She's like, there's been an altitude change. And so you could tell she knew her stuff. And so she was like, this isn't uncommon. Plus the colder temperatures combined with that. And she was like, you know what? I'm just parked around the corner. I'll just zip over here. I've got jumper cables. Of course, she had jumper cables too. So we're like, oh, this is awesome. And so in moments, she had zipped over to us. There just happened to be an empty space in front of us. We were parallel parked, in this little village, and so there happened to be an empty space right in front of us that was away from the traffic. She just pulled her car right up, and of course, with her expertise, she just hooked everything up, knew exactly what to do, which for me is like rocket science. And she had our car started in no time. And so after my car is cranked and we're about to disperse, I was like, I just have to know your name. Like, you've been so kind to do this. What is your name? She was like, Wanda. And so I was like, okay. So we introduced ourselves, and I'm Haley, I'm Andrew, and just had to let her know how much it meant to us that she stepped in and helped us. And I left that encounter just flooded, honestly, with the goodness of God. First, in his just extravagant provision for us in that moment, that it was my birthday, and it would not have been the end of the world if we had to go find help elsewhere. But that whole scenario could have turned out very differently. It could have been an hour or two before we figured out what was going on, and before we found somebody who happened to have jumper cables. And we wanted to get home. We were ready to eat dinner. I'm pregnant right now, so dinner time, any meal time is very important, So this just could have gone very differently. And yet, right when our need arose, the Lord stepped in and met that need. And he did it using a vessel that I wouldn't necessarily have expected. He did it using a vessel that I personally was sitting there assessing as peculiar. And I'm, sure there are worse words that I could have used to describe her. But, I mean, frankly, what was standing out to me in my mind as I looked at her standing on that walkway before she came over to us was, well, she's different. Meaning, she's not like me. That's basically what it boils down to. She looks different from me. She's not dressed the way I would dress. She doesn't look how I look. And immediately I'm commenting on she's peculiar. And so I just felt like the Lord, in his kindness, he's so kind in how he molds us and shapes us, and even in how he brings correction to our hearts, and how he repositions us, and how he changes the posture of our heart. He's just so kind. So in his kindness, I just felt him removing blinders from my eyes, and revealing to me in a fresh way that people aren't supposed to look like me, and live just like me, and dress just like me, and be just like me. He's creative, and he's a God of diversity, and there's great beauty in the different ways we've all been wired. And frankly, most people who've been a mechanic for 20 years, they're not going to be in some little Pinteresty, trendy outfit and all, look the same and look like some model that just stepped out of Vogue or something. I mean, that's not how that person is going to, that's not the package that person is going to come in. And when you were in our situation, you wanted that kind of person. You wanted Wanda there. And it dawned on me afterward that she was probably standing there, gazing in the other direction, trying to be subtle. She heard us not being able to crank my car. So she wasn't just acting strange. She was standing there kind of waiting to see what was happening with our car so that she could step in and help us. So the whole experience was just so kind of the Lord, and so humbling in my heart, and just a chance to reposition myself before him, and allow him to remove another layer of blindness on my eyes, and to learn how to see people the way he sees them, and to just again be reminded that people aren't supposed to be just like me, and that oftentimes the vessels he wants to use in our lives are precisely the people who are different from us, who don't talk like us, don't dress like us, who offer a different perspective from us, have a different skill set from us. He wants to bring us together, and we need each other. And So I share this with you to encourage you with the same thing, that we want to be praying and asking the Lord to remove blinders wherever we have blinders, wherever we're missing his heart for other people, wherever we're misjudging others or discounting or disregarding others just because they don't look like us. You know, we want God to change that about us. We want his heart for people. And I share it too just to celebrate his extravagant provision. I just walked away thinking, you know, he didn't have to do that, but he cared that it was my birthday and that I was hungry and we wanted to get where we were going. And he provided. The minute we had a need, there was the provision for that need. And he's just so kind, and he cares about the details of our lives. He cares about the big things that we're waiting on, the big things that we're praying through, but he cares about the little things, and he cares about the details of our lives. And so just be reminded of that, friend, that he sees where you are. He knows where you are. He knows the ins and outs of your day. He knows your daily routine. He knows the things that have frustrated you. He knows the setbacks. He knows the little frustrations of the day. And he knows what will really speak to your heart, what will really minister his goodness to your heart. And he wants to make himself known to you in those everyday ways. And I'm just praying that each of us grow in our eyes to see his goodness in those everyday ways, in those intimate places that would be so easy for him to not be part of, yet he chooses to be part of them. I'm just praying that he'll continue to give us eyes to see him at work in those ways and to see the people around us with his eyes.